right. So, what's up? Hang on 1 second, guys. Yeah, keep the light on, please. Thanks. All right. Welcome, everybody. It took me a little bit to get this thing going properly. I haven't streamed in a while, so figured I'd hop on and do a little birthday stream. Thank you, Tiger Blood. I appreciate that. If you guys have any questions or whatever, happy to answer them, and then we'll see where it goes. You know, maybe I'll come up with some things to talk about. Like, since there aren't any questions right at this second, one thing that I've been asked about lately is how did I get over the groin injury that I had, the athletic pubalgia, as they call it, which to me is just a really poor diagnosis because whether you call it a sports hernia, athletic pubalgia, whatever way you go, it really does not tell you exactly what's going wrong. It basically just says you have pain in your pelvis. It's a really common injury, so there's a lot of people who get this with playing soccer or sprinting, playing hockey, sports where you have to cut a lot, things like that. And the main issue is you get significant pain in your pelvis anytime you do a motion like sprinting. So I've been asked lately by people who are dealing with this, how did I get rid of it? And Anon, I'll answer that question here in just a second after I talk about this. The main thing you have to do is take a break from training because athletic pubalgia or sports hernia really is a chronic overuse injury where the tissues of your pelvis, like your abdominals where they attach, or your adductors, that common attachment point for your abs and your adductors, gets worn down over time, and it becomes something that has chronic pain, and eventually it can turn into an acute injury. So if you're dealing with groin pain, which is super common, and you have a sports hernia or athletic pubalgia, I'd really suggest taking time away from training. And then when you reintroduce training, you have to be really careful about what you do, both from a loading perspective, so you have to manage your load really well, minimize the amount of, heavy split loaded exercises you do, limit the number of block starts you do, limit the number of days you train per week, things like that. But the first thing you have to do is really stop training for a while, because otherwise you're just going to keep building up these micro tears in those tissues, and it's not going to go away, and it'll get worse. And the same thing goes for if you have Achilles tendonitis or another type of chronic injury. You just really need to dial back the loading before you're going to see any relief on the pain side. And for me, it took a really long time. So first question coming through the chat, we got thoughts on the T-Apex and accuracy of top speed. So I think the top speed is, at a minimum, it's consistent. Whether it's exactly accurate, I don't know, but it seems like that would be the simplest point of data to collect for the machine, because you imagine you have a spool of cord basically that you're pulling out of the machine, and there's a certain diameter to that spool, and so as it spins, it should be pretty easy for the machine to detect how fast that cord is unraveling and thus give you velocities. So I do think it's pretty accurate, and it seems pretty consistent as far as like the reps I know I ran slower, or I ran slower on the free lap. It's going to show a lower top speed 9 times out of 10 at least. So I would say it's pretty accurate. Overall, it's been good for my purposes, but in all transparency, I got it at a major discount. So would I spend $5,000 on it? Maybe. I spent like half that, and I'm really happy with my purchase. I have not used the overspeed function yet, and that's like the biggest downside to it, I would say, is you have to set up an additional anchor point and attach a pulley to the main line coming out of the T-apex to do overspeed beyond 7 meters per second. So that's probably the biggest difference between it and the 1080 from like a practical use standpoint. Obviously the 1080 is going to be a higher quality product, and this is just sort of a knockoff version of it, but for my purposes it's working really well. I've only used it for resisted sprinting, and for that I really like it. So Ivan, thank you for the birthday wishes. How does a training week look like for you the week before a big competition? If the meet's on Saturday, what are you doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, etc.? So if I'm going to be racing on Saturday, I'm probably not going to do much other than maybe a training session on Tuesday. So then I have Wednesday and Thursday off. I might do a light lift on Wednesday depending on how fresh I need to be and how I'm feeling, what I feel I need to work on. So maybe sprint Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday, but probably Tuesday. Like do a little warm-up session Monday, sprint Tuesday, maybe lift Wednesday, but probably take the day off. Thursday take the day off, Friday do a light warm-up, and then compete on Saturday. I've found that my best performances are always when I'm the most fresh, at least when I'm competing. I set my PR this year. I had run on Sunday, and then I ran again on Friday, so I had 4 days completely off. I didn't even look at a track in any of those days. So the reason I bring that up is because I think oftentimes we think we have to train and we have to do X amount of work in a week if we want to perform well on the weekend. And really you have to work with where you're at. You know, I was fried from that Sunday meet because I drove down to San Diego, spent a couple days there, drove back. I ran 2 races on that Sunday. I ran pretty well. They were both season's bests. It was like 10.8 and 10.7. So I was pretty fried because I hadn't run that fast in a couple years. And so those 4 days, I needed to take them off because I was sore, I was tired, I was also working a pretty demanding schedule at the time. So for me, it made sense just to do nothing and then show up and race on that Friday, 4 days later, and then I ran a personal best. So don't think that there's any one way to do it. You just have to work with what makes sense for your state of readiness, you know, how recovered are you, and that sort of thing. If you can fit some training in, great. You know, I'm going to try to do that as often as I can. But don't be afraid to just take some time off and get fresh, because your body's not going to forget how to sprint in a few days. If you took 2 weeks off, maybe you would run a little slower, but I've had times where I took time off and I came back running just as fast or faster than when I left off. So it really depends if you're chronically overloaded or if you're good at load management, whether you're going to train a lot that week or not. In general, though, I would say just get one good training session in early in the week, and then everything else is focused on being recovered and ready to go for that meet. So let's see. Yusuf, which flats do you recommend for your track workouts and warm-ups as a sprinter? I wear the Brooks Adrenaline GTS 23s as my main running shoe. And then, of course, I have the Antipes for when I don't want to wear spikes, but I still want to run. So I would say most of the time, though, I'm wearing the Brooks for my warm-ups, walking around, you know, like kind of your general use shoe. I like the Brooks Adrenaline GTS 23. They're really stable, they're really comfortable, and I think they're just a really quality shoe. I'm on my second pair right now. Do you have a specific body weight scale you recommend? No, I would just, you know, look at reviews and stuff, and if it seems inaccurate, return it. But I don't know, I'd just buy a scale and, you know, find one that fits your budget and has pretty good reviews. The one I have, I don't know if I think it's like a Weight Watchers scale that I have. Sometimes it gives me some wonky readings, but, you know, what are you going to do? It was cheap and I bought it at Target, so. Hello. Thank you guys for being here. What's up, David? Appreciate the birthday wishes. Everybody go follow the Alacritarian on Instagram, please. He's got some great nutrition info, supplement info. Just a cool guy overall. Good friend of mine, so go follow him, please. Happy birthday. You gave me motivation to keep PRing and eventually break 22 someday. There we go, man. You definitely can do it, so just keep at it. You know, you have to stay healthy. That's going to be the biggest thing that you can do to ensure that you reach your goals, is don't get hurt. Because if you get hurt, you know, say you have 2 good months of training because you're training really hard, but then you get hurt and now you're out for a month, then it takes another month or 2 to get back to where you were. It just throws everything off. So be a little bit conservative with your loading, so that way you can sustainably train for 52 weeks in a row, and then you're probably going to reach your goals as long as you're training, doing specific work, and making sure that you're working on the qualities you need to get better. Um, the ultimate thing you got to do is stay healthy. My ultimate goal for the 100, I don't really have one. I mean, I guess that's not completely true. I want to run 10.3, but I don't really set like hard goals just because I think it's hard to predict. But 10.3 is something that if I ran 10.3, I feel I would be. I feel like that'd be a great accomplishment. The fastest time I ever ran in high school was 11.3. So if I were to be able to drop another second between when I ended high school and then throughout the rest of my time as a sprinter, I think that would be a great success. Coach Wilson, thanks for stopping by, man. Another great guy to follow. The Black Sheep Rises on Instagram. You've accomplished a lot this year. What's the biggest change you've made? It's a good question. I don't do very much general training, so I don't do a lot of circuits. I don't do a lot of tempo. I'll do tempo periodically if I feel like I need to run, but I'm not quite ready to sprint, and there's kind of a gap in my schedule or something's been bugging me. Maybe I'll do some tempo. But I don't do a lot of general training. It's mostly go to the track, sprint as fast as I can. Then the next day, I'll go to the gym. I'll either lift something really heavy, do something really reactive, and then a little bit of, you could call it general work for, maybe hamstrings, calves, hip flexors, some area that I feel I need to develop. And then I rest. And then I rest long enough to come back and do another max effort session on the track, which usually is 1 to 2 days off, sometimes a little bit longer. But a very, how do I say it? Like, my focus is really on maximum intensity, working up to being as specific as I possibly can on the track. And then in the gym, I'm either going really heavy or I'm trying to target something in that really short time to peak velocity range, like 100 milliseconds, 90 milliseconds time to peak velocity. And as I've been consistent with that stuff, I've seen my acceleration improve a lot. Now, obviously, I've been doing more resisted sprints lately, so that is a confounding factor that could be playing a role in my success lately, at least with my practice times. If some of you have probably seen this if you follow me on Instagram, but this year, particularly in the last couple months, I've ran more 6.8s on the free lap in the 60 than I have ever before. Like, I think it's 4 sessions in a row or 5 sessions in a row I've been able to hit a 6.8 or better. So I've run 6.79, 6.81, 6.87, 6.88, 6.84, times like that. And that consistency is something that I haven't seen before. Usually it would be like I'd run 1.68 and then the rest were 6.9s or 7s. And then I'd go to a meet and I'd run 6.9 or 7. So I think part of that consistency is coming from not going overboard with my training volumes, so that way I'm not getting hurt. The other thing is that I do think some of that stuff I do in the gym with the reactive work and the low time to peak velocity work has helped my acceleration a lot, because the easiest time frames to target in the gym are going to be acceleration related, and that's where I've seen, I'm consistently running like 3.90 give or take to 30. My speed isn't quite where I know it can be, so I'm still figuring that out. And once I figure that out, I should be dropping some pretty nice free lap times in the 60. For someone who has taken 7 years off after college and only lifting since, how long would it take to get back to previous form? I mean, I wouldn't put a limit on yourself, but as far as managing expectations, I would say you probably want to just accept the fact that it's probably going to take maybe a season or two to later, David. It's going to take like a season or two to get to the point where you're where you were before. So just be patient. Like, don't think that you have to run as fast as you did before, and that if you don't run as fast as you did before, it means you never will. You just have to be patient and stay healthy, stay consistent, and you'll get back to where you were eventually. What are your insights on the Nike Max Fly 2 on block clearance, acceleration, max velocity versus the Prime SP2? I much prefer the Max Fly. The SP2s mess up my ankle, and ever since they messed up my ankle, it's like been a constant issue for me. So I haven't been using those lately. they're both great shoes, but you have to find the one that fits your foot well and feels comfortable. So I would say the Max Fly 2 is better just overall for me. But I also like the Jaw Fly 4 a lot, so don't be afraid to buy a basic spike like the Jaw Fly. You'll run fast in that just as well. Good job, Khalil. You know, to be able to run times like that into headwinds while working and, you know, managing the life stress that's associated with all that, I think that's pretty quality. So just keep it up, man. Don't be afraid to take extra time off so you can maximize the intensity of the sessions that you do. Joka, is tempo work pretty important for a 400 meter runner? I would say it's more important for a 400 meter runner than a 100 meter runner, because you have to have the confidence in yourself to be able to go the distance. You have to be used to making a lot of contacts with the ground for your event. You want to build that elasticity in the legs and the stiffness in the legs. So I think tempo is particularly important for a 400 meter runner. I think you can get away with being a 100 meter runner and not doing any, whereas as a 400 meter runner, I think you'd be hard pressed to find someone who is successful at the 400 who never does any tempo. Whereas for the 100, there's probably countless people who never run tempo and run pretty well. Coach Wilson, no problem, man. Always happy to shout you out. I appreciate our discussions and everything, and your thought process. Are you trying anything new or planning on doing anything different during the upcoming competition phase? So one thing that'll be different this year is last year I didn't lift at all during the season, so I will continue to lift this year. Probably going to continue to focus on that like 50 to 80 meter range as the bulk of my training, at least for a little while. I don't know if I would say I'm going to try anything new. It's more just you constantly evolve and you constantly make little adjustments over time that as I go through training and I record my training and I see, you know, what am I doing? What effect is that having? I'll make subtle adjustments along the way. So that might eventually equate to something being new that I'm doing, but it wasn't like, oh, I have this idea of this new thing I'm going to do. It's just sort of I naturally arrive at a certain destination by those little micro decisions and you know, little things you figure out along the way. Let's see. Yusuf, you're 31, always played football, first year doing track, sort of baseline testing without serious training, hit 12:02. Is 11:2 realistic? Yeah, I think so. You probably have a lot of room to make up both in the efficiency of your acceleration as well as how well you maintain your speed and your posture and your technique when you're in upright sprinting. So I definitely would say that running low 11s is realistic. So you just have to dedicate yourself to training long enough that those skills and your ability to produce quality efforts consistently improves. So definitely keep at it. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to run in the 11s and low 11s, you know. By the way, while you guys are here, please hit the like button. Get those likes up as high as we can. Right now we're at 10 according to my software, so I think we could do a little better than that, right? Typical YouTube streamer type of thing to say. Lachlan Emerson, nice to hear from you. You've been struggling to dip under 4 seconds for your first 30 meters. Training PR in the 100 is 11:7. Any tips? Definitely being strong helps your 30 meter time, no doubt. The other thing is, like, I think the initial push into the blocks, or if you're doing a 3-point start, the initial push into the track needs to be very horizontal. When I'm in the blocks, I'm in a position, I've set up my blocks in a way to where the angle of my shins is very horizontal and the push that I'm giving into the blocks is very horizontal. But from that point, pretty much everything is vertical force application for me. Not that I'm not applying horizontal force, but my emphasis is on applying vertical force. And then the horizontal force component sort of just happens naturally as a result of having strong enough hamstrings and glutes and calves and being in the right positions out of the blocks. So I'd take a look at your block settings. As long as you're strong enough to get into a position where you push really horizontally, do that. Now, if you're not strong enough for that, then you have to go to a slightly higher angle, not try to go low, because if you are not strong enough and you try to go low, you're going to stumble, hit the ground with a lot of braking forces, and not run as fast. The other thing is, like, if you spam frequency too soon in the sprint, I think it disrupts the acceleration pattern. So try to be forceful in those first few steps before you feel your frequency really start to ramp up, and make sure you're prioritizing strength if you really want to improve your acceleration. First things first, happy birthday. Thank you, Javier or Xavier, whichever you prefer. Have you used the Audi Zero SP3? I have not. Have not used those. I've talked to a couple people who've used them, and they said the fit was a little weird, like the upper material was a little off for them. So unfortunately, I can't give you any advice there because I haven't used them. Are clean pulls a decent substitute for power cleans? Yeah, I think so. You can also do like those reactive high pulls, so you're in a upright position holding the bar like you're about to do a hang clean. You just sort of dip really quickly and explode up and do a high pull from that position. So I would do high pulls from the floor, clean pulls from the floor, and then reactive high pulls from like an upright position. And I think you can get a lot of the benefits that you get out of Olympic lifts out of those derivatives. Victor, based on double periodization once indoor season concludes, is it necessary to go back to a 4 to 8 week general prep period? No, and I mean, personally, I don't really phase out my training like that much. I think it helps from like a conceptual standpoint to have an idea of, okay, in this period of time, I'm going to focus more on these qualities, and then at this point in time, I'm going to focus more on those qualities. I think in like a collegiate setting where they tend to destroy athletes and beat them up with too much training, going back to a GPP phase is wise because they need to just like come down from the intensity of the training that they've been doing and the volume of training they've been doing and the traveling and plus school and all that. So if you're super fried after indoor, then yeah, take some time off, reduce the volumes a little bit, reduce the intensities, and just kind of calm your system down. But if you feel fine and you don't have any issues, then just keep training. You know, you don't always have to go back to some other type of phase. I don't really look at my own training as this phase versus that phase nowadays. I just have certain qualities I know I need to hit, and I'm going to cycle through those. And then once I see that, okay, that's no longer having the effect I want, then I'm going to change my training accordingly based on where I'm at and what I need to do. Sounds like you have a pretty good understanding of what type of lifting works for you. I'm struggling to find a lot of evidence for what lifts is best for sprinting other than this works for me. I try to simplify things a little bit in my head. You need to be strong, you need to be explosive, so do some things that are targeting max strength and explosiveness. You need to be reactive, and you need to be able to produce force in short time frames. So eventually, once your strength is developed to a high level and the diminishing returns effect kicks in, that's when you want to start considering, what can I do to improve my short duration rate of force development? What can I do to become more reactive? But when in doubt, just like, get maximally strong and work on some explosive stuff, and then maybe a few accessories to target weak areas here and there. And I think you'll be good. I wouldn't try to overcomplicate it until you find that you're not seeing any transfer anymore from any increased strength or anything like that. Biggest belief you've changed? That's a real good question. I would say that my belief in my ability has improved. So I believe in myself more than ever. So that's good. I now believe you need less training than most people would think or most people would suggest, as far as training frequency, as far as the different types of training you need in your program. I think there's a lot of people who think you need to go and look at Dan Paff's program or Charlie Francis's program or Clyde Hart's program or whoever and think that you need to do everything they did. But they're in their own unique situation, looking at the athletes in front of them and applying the concepts that they think are most applicable to those athletes. And then as they go through that process, they probably have certain things that they tend to default back to. And then that eventually becomes their philosophy on training. And then they share that philosophy on training, and people then take that and run with it. But you have to look at the athlete you're working with, which but for everybody listening, you got to look at the athlete in front of you or look at yourself and really identify, what is it that this athlete needs? Am I going to get better by doing circuit training? I doubt it. I don't like circuit training. It's a pain. And so if I don't like it, and I don't see it having any direct benefit. Should I waste my time on that as a 33-year-old athlete with a full-time job and a kid and a wife and, limited time to train and all that? I would rather focus on the most specific qualities possible, the highest intensities possible. And so while I've always been a very intensity-driven athlete and coach, I would say I focus more on that now than ever before. What's up, Mr. Spiraling? Hope you and your cat are doing well. Speaking of NCAA programs, are there any collegiate sprint coaches you actually trust? That's a good question. There's a lot of good coaches out there for sure, but there's also so many schools, so it's really hard to narrow that down. One thing that I would do is I would look at the schools that are realistic for you to possibly go to, that you have interest in going to, and kind of narrow down some options for yourself. What teams can I get on? Do they have the major I'm looking for? Is it in a location I want to be at? Do you want to be close to your family or not? Do you want to be in a good climate for sprinting? Being in a good climate for sprinting is going to do a lot for you independent of the coach. So identify the schools. Then go on Direct Athletics or go on TFRS and TFFRS, if people don't know what TFRS are. Sometimes when I say TFRS, I think of teeth. But go on there and just pick a random athlete. Look at the 100-meter sprinters or 200-meter or 400, whatever you do. Look at those sprinters and go back a couple of years and see, what did they come in at? Where did they leave at? If every athlete on the team leaves slower than when they showed up, you need to avoid that school like the plague, unless it's your only option. If they're all getting better, that's a good option. If they get better and then kind of go flat, or some athletes get better, some get worse, maybe there's some injuries involved or something there. But I would really look at the progression of their time, since all that stuff is available online. Identify the schools you're considering, and then identify, did the athletes who are there in your event progress or not? And make sure that the coach who was there during that time is the same coach that's going to be there when you're there. And that'll give you a better idea of, is the program, legit or not. So with being maximally strong, does that mean prioritizing rep ranges less than 6? Yeah, I pretty much, if I'm doing a strength exercise, Joka, I only do sets of 1, 2, or 3 unless it's a warm-up set. Because to drive maximal strength or maximum explosiveness, if you did 3 sets of 8 versus 8 sets of 3, what do you think the average, force production, average bar velocity, average bar acceleration across all those sets, which one do you think is going to be higher? 8 sets of 3 or 3 sets of 8? If you do 3 sets of 8, first of all, the load is going to be lower, so you're not going to get a maximal strength stimulus. You're probably going to get more of a hypertrophy stimulus. Second of all, the number of quality reps you're going to get doing 3 sets of 8 versus 8 sets of 3. 8 sets of 3, you could have quality reps for every set and every rep. But after a few reps, when you're doing sets of 8, the quality goes down. The load is limited because of the number of reps you're doing. So I would only do sets of 8, 10, 12, that sort of thing on accessories or on certain exercises. Like if you look at my Instagram, I did a few days ago or something, I did some banded exercises where I'm like swinging my leg with a band attached to it. That's something where you can go higher reps because it's not a huge stimulus. It's more about loading the tissue and kind of feeling that I'm activating the right muscles, and it's not a super fatiguing exercise. So that's something you could probably go higher reps on. But if you're doing like a heavy box squat, deadlift, cleans, box jumps, things like that, I would really be careful about the number of reps per set, because you cannot achieve a high intensity if the reps are too high because of fatigue, and then the effect of, if you don't have a heavy enough weight on the bar, it's just not enough of a stimulus to get stronger. So since you have a base of doing higher volumes of work per set, I would drop that to maybe sets of 2, 3, or 4 and try to increase the load and just focus on getting quality work at heavier loads if you're trying to get stronger. Jason, you're a really tall 110-meter hurdler. Very common issue is your start. First steps are inconsistent. Really, it just comes down to practicing the specific skills and making sure that your block setup and then your intent leaving the blocks is going to put you in a proper position in those first couple steps to then be in proper positioning when you hit that first hurdle. So I think it more comes down to just skill acquisition, making sure that your blocks are set up in a way that allows you to express the skills you have. And then from there, make sure that you're not trying to stay too low as a hurdler. You got to get up. So for you, everything should be up, up, up. Whereas a 100-meter sprinter, they could probably push out a little bit more because they don't have a barrier that's going to hit them in 13 meters or whatever. So I would first look at your block settings. Make sure you're not crashing into the ground with your foot moving forward on those first few steps. And then from there, I would just sort of let go of it and trust in the fact that you're good enough at the rest of the race to not need to hyper focus on the start. Because I think if you overthink the start, you're going to run slower. So work on some basics, like, is my foot moving in the right direction into the ground? Is my posture progressing properly? Am I in the right positions by the time I need to be to hit the first hurdle properly? Once you do that, as long as you're getting stronger and you're working on your starts and all that consistently over time, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I would focus more on whatever your strengths are, which as a taller athlete is probably the back half of the race, and really just be as good at that as possible, so that way you can trust that I just need an average start and then I'll be good, because down the track I'm going to catch up to everybody else. Or if you're with them at the first hurdle, you're going to pull away from them. Let's see. If I could only do 2 exercises in the gym, it'd probably be box squats and RDLs. And then the RDL could turn into like a hang clean or something like that later, but box squats and RDLs, if I only had 2 exercises, would probably be what I did. Usain Bolt talks a lot about core strength. Any thoughts? Yeah, I've neglected core my whole life, and it's probably not the best thing ever. But yeah, I mean, core strength is important for sure. I don't know if you're going to get that from doing like sets of 100 crunches, but if you can't control your pelvis by having strong enough and well wired enough core muscles, then you're going to have trouble, because pelvic positioning and pelvic stability, pelvic control is really important. Why? Because your legs are directly attached to your pelvis. So if your pelvis is flopping all over the place, you're going to have some inconsistent steps. So it's definitely important, but I don't know that like the average athlete, that their core is so weak that it's the main limiting factor, but you should definitely incorporate core training. If I run indoors this season, yeah, I'd probably just focus on the 60. The 200 for me, I don't know, man. I would love to be good at the 200, but I've just never been good at it, and training on the turn a lot beats you up, and I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a pussy, but I'll probably just focus on the 60 for now. I'm glad your cat is doing well, by the way. My cats say hi. Khalil says, I heard deltoid exercise help a ton. Are they a must? I mean, I think you should overhead press. That's good exercise. You could do it seated, standing, dumbbells, barbell, whatever. But yeah, strong delts are important. But you're going to get a lot of deltoid development from sprinting. So I would keep it pretty simple on the lifting side of things, and just pick a basic exercise for your shoulders like overhead press, and just gradually progress it. You don't have to be pressing 315, like that's not going to help you, but I think I've noticed that when I've introduced overhead pressing, my arm swings feel better overall, like without even trying. So I do think there's something to be said for waking up your shoulders a little bit with some strength work there. But it's not like you got to go hog wild with it. Love to hear more about your journey to self-belief and confidence. So I dealt with like a lot of anxiety when I was a little kid, and over time it's gotten better. Nowadays I'm a pretty low anxiety person. But I would tend to overthink things, and the overthinking, I think, came from a fear of failing. I also had really bad asthma when I was an infant, so I think I had some subconscious fears associated with like being out of breath and things like that I had to overcome. So overcoming that helped me with speed endurance work and things like that. I had a realization one day when I was talking to my dad, and he's like, I think this is affecting you, and it was like a light bulb went off in my head, and so that was one aspect of it. That's not confidence related necessarily, but it definitely improved my confidence when I was going into a longer rep, because I knew I'm not going to die. I just have this like subconscious fear about not being able to breathe, because when I was a little kid I couldn't breathe. But as far as the mental side of performance and all that, like getting in the blocks and being confident, part of that comes from I try to approach my sessions and my meets and all that stuff with being grateful that I'm there, being grateful that I have the ability to train and compete, and just trying to enjoy myself as an athlete. You know, I would imagine that none of us in this stream are getting paid to sprint. You know, I might get paid to produce a program or something like that, but like nobody's paying me to sprint. So why am I doing it then? Because I enjoy it. So I need to approach it from the perspective of enjoying it, because if I'm not enjoying what I'm doing, why am I doing it? You know, I should go do something else. I should go shoot guns at the shooting range or go hike or something else. If sprinting, if I'm putting so much pressure on myself to perform well that it's leading to confidence and anxiety issues that are holding me back, like what's the point? Whereas if I approach my session with, I'm going to enjoy this session, I'm grateful to be out here, that sort of opens up yourself to not fearing failure, because if you're enjoying yourself and you're doing something you enjoy, there really is no true failure. There's only things that if they happen, you can learn from them. You know, if I run a rep and the time isn't great, and then I run another one and the time isn't great, there's something to learn there. Maybe it was I wasn't fresh enough, or I should have, you know, rested longer between reps, or I got something that's bugging me, or I didn't sleep well, or whatever. And I can sort of rationalize why the performance wasn't great, and then I can walk away from that knowing, okay, well, next time I'll probably do better. But if you go into the rep thinking it has to be perfect, or if I don't run this certain time, you know, then I'm not on track, and blah blah blah, like it just kills the fun, and then there's really no point in doing it. So I think approaching it initially from the perspective of I'm here to enjoy myself, I'm grateful to be here. There's other people who wish they were running as fast as me, and there's people who can't even run, so I'm going to be grateful for that. I'm going to enjoy my time. And I'm still going to want to run fast. Like if I have a day where I don't run fast, it kind of sucks, but you just have to keep it in perspective and watch yourself talk. You know, if you spend time thinking to yourself, I'm not going to get better, or you let those doubts come in, it's gonna ruin your time, you know, both literally and figuratively. So be confident from the perspective of, and I know that's kind of a circular answer, how do I be confident? Well, you got to be confident. But I think there is something to be said for consciously choosing to be confident and choosing to look at the reality that there really is no limit on, like, can I run a tenth of a second faster? For sure. There's no reason why not. Will I? I don't know. That's dependent on a lot of factors, but the possibility is there. So I'm going to focus on the possibility, and when in doubt, remind myself that I'm out here to enjoy myself, and I do this because I enjoy it. So even if the time wasn't great one day, I still got out there, had fun, did what I wanted to do. And I think over time, if you like repeatedly go through that process, then eventually you get to a meet and you're like, oh, it's beautiful out. It's fun to be here. Look at all these cool people I'm around. I get the opportunity today to compete. There can be an opportunity there to have a lot less fear and worry and, you know, all that come into play when you're approaching it from that perspective. Whereas if you tell yourself, I have to run this time, otherwise I'm a failure, or, you know, you mess up your start and, oh, that's, you know, oh, I did it again. It's like the self-talk that you have with yourself plays a big role on your thought process going forward. Happy birthday. Thank you for the information. For sure, Bennett. I'm more than happy to share. I wish I could share more often, honestly. But you know how time goes by, and all of a sudden it's been a month and I haven't put out a video, and it's just how things go. Weird question, but do you think it's true that countries such as Japan, China, etc. have good talent, but their training isn't as good as Americans? I mean, China has sheer numbers, so there's bound to be someone there that is super talented. But I know for a fact that their training has not always been the most well thought out. It's a very like work volume oriented training culture. I don't know too much about Japan's training, but I would imagine there's people who are fast there, you know. The thing with America is we have populations of people who are more likely to be faster than others. We have areas of it where people train where the climate is good all year to train year round. And between having a large number, like a large population of people, which means there's going to be a large population of people who can run fast, paired with having a lot of places where there's good weather all year to train, that's going to lead to good results, you know. And then if you add on to that we have a history of, you know, thinking about training in a certain way and having pretty good training and all that, then that's going to lead to America being pretty good with their, you know, sprinters and being able to develop sprinters. But yeah, I think with China, for example, the training is just a little bit crazy sometimes. I don't know too much about Japan's training though. No problem, Jason. Bowie, no problem. Thank you for the birthday wishes. Overhead press or push press, which is better? I would start with overhead press because if you don't have a place to train where you can drop the bar from overhead, you're gonna have to lower the bar back down, and you want your shoulders to be strong enough to handle that. Plus, I would rather just focus on the more simple, basic strength exercise first before moving on to the more explosive one. But both overhead presses and push presses are great. It's just I would more start with overhead press and then progress to push press over time. Elijah, nice to see you, man. Thanks for the birthday wishes. Dude, it's crazy. I think there's a lot of people who, in fact, I know there's a lot of people who have been watching for a long time, and it's really cool to see. You know, I'll meet people at track meets who are like, oh, dude, I've been watching for X amount of time. Or I saw a guy at City College the other day where I train, and he came up to my wife and was like, is your husband ATHLETE.X? I've been watching him ever since I was a kid, and blah, blah, blah. And it's really, it's just awesome to see, you know, because I'm not doing this to be famous. Like, if I wanted to be famous, sprinting would not be the thing that I focus on. I don't do it for clout. I don't do it for ego. Like, I purely want to share information, share my love of sprinting and my love of training with other people who love to sprint and train, and try to help them either find a way to get better, avoid any issues that have hurt me in the past, things like that. And so it's cool when I see guys like you who have been watching for a long time, because, you know, you've gone from being a kid to now you're a man. And if I've been able to help along the way, whether it's with mentality or training or whatever along the way, that's an honor. So glad to see you're still around, you know. Sparksy, what do you think of Coach Tony Holler's approach to speed training? Tony Holler blocked me on Twitter, as I've said multiple times in the past. I don't know. I think his approach to answer your question directly, I think his approach to speed training is fine, but I don't think that the average person is going to continue to get better long term just by doing, you know, fly 10s and the 23-second drill and whatever. I'm sure they do more than that, but that's what he talks about a lot in his seminars and all that. I personally am not a fan of any specific training system. You know, if I was to focus on any training system, it'd probably be the Charlie Francis one, but really I don't believe in following a specific system. I think of learning from these different approaches to training and then applying it to yourself and finding what is the way of training that's going to be best for me based on, you know, how I respond to training, what works with my body and all that. Tony Holler himself, I just think, I don't know. I made a video about the Feed the Cats program, which is why he blocked me on Twitter, because he was too soft to have any kind of pushback, even though in the video I talked about how he was a good coach who had success, who has a good program. He still was so soft that anything I said that was not exactly accurate or was a slight misinterpretation or was not giving a, you know, glowing review pissed him off to the point where he blocked me. Now I think he's just sort of a soft individual overall. He's a socialist, and I'm not going to get into that. But as far as his training, it's reasonable, but eventually you got to move beyond 10-meter flies and that sort of thing. Like, you have to get to a more traditional approach of, you know, covering specific distances in your training, and lifting weights is good. You know, like, I think there's things that he could probably adjust with his program that would benefit most people more than just what is talked about, at least in the seminars and videos I've watched. Now, I'm not around him, so I can't really judge his program. I don't know what he's doing today with his athletes, so I'm not going to sit here and say anything negative about his training. But I'm a little skeptical of like how much of a guru he's been turned into by like football coaches and things like that. Opinions on box power cleans, like cleaning from blocks and things like that. That's fine, yeah. They're good. They're hard because you don't have as much time to accelerate the bar, so it's definitely like a progression to make after you've gotten used to doing power cleans. Happy birthday. Thank you, guys. What's up, Javier? What's up, Mark? Good to see you here. Appreciate the birthday wishes. Would you consider competing for potential Masters records? Yeah, I definitely want to continue competing once I'm in the Masters age group. Definitely. Whether I'd break a record, I don't know about breaking the 35-year-old record or the 40-year-old record, but maybe the 45-year-old record. But Justin Gatlin, Kim Collins, those guys have run pretty fast in the higher age groups, so those records are gnarly. I figure as long as I'm at, high up on the list of whoever's in my age group, I'm doing a good job. How much emphasis should someone put on speed endurance compared to top speed training? That's a good question. So I like to progress from short to long, as most of you probably know. But I think you need to focus on speed and short speed endurance throughout the year. You need to progress up to the point where you can do them at a quality enough level, which is where the short to long approach comes in. Start with acceleration, build up your abilities. But you don't want to just hang around in those really short distances, like just doing 30s and 40s for a long time, because you're neglecting the majority of the race. So I would try to progress up to doing like 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s as soon as you can safely, because I think you're going to get a lot out of sprinting in that like 50 to 80 meter range from a speed standpoint, becoming better at resisting deceleration and things like that, I would really suggest progressing up to that. So as far as true speed endurance work, I try to only get into that once I've covered my bases as far as speed and short speed endurance. Then I'll get into speed endurance work. It's just you want to make sure that the bulk of that rep you're running is quality. So don't jump from doing 30s to doing 150s, because you're going to spend a lot of time running reps that just kind of suck, But both are very important qualities, speed and speed endurance. I would just try to develop speed and then short speed endurance first before progressing to longer speed endurance reps. Yusuf, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate your support here. Thanks for all the help. Should a beginner sprinter aiming for PRs in either the 100 or 60? Should you do speed work on the track every week all year, or sometimes have a month or so off for weights? I think it's fine to take some time off. I think this year I took 2 weeks off when my son was born, and then I had another maybe 3 to 4 weeks where, I was kind of easing back in, so I didn't do a lot of like dedicated sprint training. I was just getting my body used to sprinting again, doing some plyos, things like that. So I think you should take some amount of time off. The exact amount that you take off is going to depend on, are you banged up from the season? Do you have a bunch of aches and pains going on? Or do you feel really good? If you feel real good, just take a couple weeks off just to give yourself a break, let yourself regain some motivation, and then come back to training. If you've developed a bunch of injuries and you feel really fatigued and all that, that's when I would take a longer period off, like a month or more. But I don't think you don't have to like specifically take X amount of time off. It's just, it needs to be appropriate based on your like the condition that you're in at the end of the season. But I would suggest as many weeks out of the year as you can doing something that's fast, even if that's just reintroducing 20s and 30s for acceleration. That's still pretty fast, even if you're not reaching max velocity, so you want to be doing some kind of fast sprinting pretty much year round, other than maybe a couple weeks off or a month off if you've been banged up. I hope that helps. And let me know if you have any follow-up questions. Kim Collins' 40-year age group record should go down real easy. Yeah, right. 992 or 99. I forget what it is exactly, but man, that fool was rolling at 40 years old. It's crazy. In 8 months of training, you were able to reduce your time in 60 meters from 7.7 to 6.73. Wow, that's crazy. That's Very impressive. You pulled your hamstring and now working your way back up. Yeah, that's the thing, man. If you progress really fast, that's awesome, but there's a cost. And the faster you're running, the more time off you're going to need in between sessions, and the more you're going to have to focus on, not getting hurt. Because as the intensities get higher and the speeds get higher, now the tensions are higher in your tissues, and the demand for coordination, both within the muscle and between muscles and all that, is going to be higher. So the faster you run, the more careful you have to be about your load management and all that. And unfortunately, you experience that yourself. But as long as you're wise about your reintroduction of training and you don't progress too quickly and re-injure yourself, you'll get back to running fast again soon. Cliff, thank you. If jumping higher is my primary goal, how often would you sprint per week? Maybe once or twice a week. And then you could do twice a week. You just don't have to do that many sprints per session, just enough to run fast and then shut it down. So that way you are fresh enough for your jump sessions, so you can get enough specific jump work in order to get better. When it comes down to jumping, you got to jump a lot. And when I say a lot, like you don't want to get yourself hurt, so don't overdo it, but you need a fair bit of exposure to jumping in order to jump high, and you don't want your sprinting to take away from your ability to jump. So 1 to 2 times a week is good. Maybe 3 times every 10 days, something like that. But definitely prioritize your jumping, and then line out how often you want to jump, and then fit your sprinting within that, whether it's the same day or not. Opinions on tempo runs. I don't know how crucial they are, but I think if you do them once a week, you'll be able to maintain some good fitness without overdoing it or dealing with any negatives associated with them. I feel like the earlier you are in your training as a sprinter, the more tempo is going to be valuable. As time has gone on, I've found less value for myself with tempo, but that's just me personally. Let's talk testosterone times 3. You got to have good testosterone levels if you want to run fast, that's for sure. Hang on. All right. Had a work email come through. Happy birthday, Cody. Was wondering what your thoughts are on the ATHLETE.X. I did talk about that at the beginning of the stream, but briefly, you can go back and listen to what I said there, but briefly, I like it. I use it mostly just for the resisted sprinting function. I haven't used the assisted sprinting function yet. Hasn't given me any problems, so I like it, but for transparency purposes, I did get it for a significant discount. But I'm not an affiliate. I don't make money if they sell one. I rejected their affiliate agreement, so I'm not. If you go buy one, I'm not going to get anything out of it. But I do think it's like way better than using a sled. That's for sure. More convenient than the X or Genie. It's just if you're going to spend $5,000 on something, you better make sure you're going to use it regularly. But I like it. It's pretty smooth with the resistance. I like to be able to adjust it on the fly, not drag a sled back every rep. Eventually I'll use the assisted sprinting function and let you guys know what I think of it. What do I think my max potential is? I think it's real. I believe that I'm capable of running 10.3 if everything came together based on my times, just based on things I've seen in training. I do think that's possible, but whether that will happen or not is tough to say. But it's a goal of mine to run, something 10.3. It's a lofty goal, but I think it's achievable. Yeah, Kim Collins' turnover was crazy. It helps that he's really skinny, It's hard to swing your leg really fast if you have thick-ass legs, so... in his case, I think being skinny was a benefit to him. How do you schedule your yearly training? We have indoor, then outdoors. Our season is similar. We have indoor like January, February, at least in the western half of the U.S. In California, we don't really have any indoor tracks, but you can find some in Arizona and New Mexico, Utah, Idaho, places like that, Washington. I personally don't plan out my training in a super specific blocked out way, but I follow a short to long program. Our outdoor tends to start in March, and then it goes until maybe June or July, depending on where you're at. So that's like the general theme of our seasons here in the U.S. It's mostly centered around the collegiate season, so that influences the schedule quite a bit. But yeah, I just follow a short to long program, and I try to, going into indoor, be as fast as I can with some short speed endurance abilities, and then during outdoor, extend it out to more traditional speed endurance zones. What do I think of THP? Yeah, I like John. He's always been nice to me, and we've communicated a fair bit about training and all that. I think he's a smart guy, has had good success with his athletes, has been around a lot of good coaches, um, cares a lot about the performance of his athletes. So I got nothing bad to say about John and the THP crew. How often do I do these? Very rarely. I should do them more often. So if you guys like this sort of thing, now that I got my green screen up, I know you can't see because it's just black. I couldn't figure out how to make it look good with a picture in the background, so we just got I'm just floating in the universe right now, in dark space right now. But maybe I'll do more Q&As over time, now that I got my green screen set up. Paulo, you can't really track time to peak velocity if you don't have a VBT tracker, but what you could do is, just to like get an idea of what loads and ranges of motion you need to do in order to target certain zones, you could film yourself and look at like how long did it take from when you initiated the concentric till when you finished it, and then just sort of categorize things like that. But it's tough if you don't have a velocity sensor to track that stuff. But just generally look at it and be like, is this exercise more reactive or more of like a grinding strength exercise? And just keep it simple like that. Like, just do something more reactive, or where there's a more rapid rate of force development or more rapid bar acceleration, and you can throw that into like the low TPV bucket. And then if it's more of like a grinding heavy lift, that's going to be longer TPV. And you could probably keep it as basic as that. Just look at it qualitatively. Does this look reactive or not? All right, throw it in the reactive bucket. Does it look like a strenuous exercise for strength? Throw it in that bucket. Thank you, Magnus. For sure, Javier, no problem. Colton, happy birthday. Thank you, bro. What do I use to measure? I use the E node, E-N-O-D-E, and the move factor X, but most of the time I use the E node just because it's a little simpler to use. The move factor X has way more metrics in it, but I like simplicity. So lately I've been using the E node more. How important is it for football linemen? For linemen, I would definitely be more in like the slow strength, or like, strength, speed strength, max strength, that zone. You still need to be explosive. So what I would do is I would take some film. If you're a lineman yourself, or someone you're coaching, I would take some film and look at, how long does it take them from when the ball is snapped and they initiate, say it's a run play, so they're going to be, blocking in a forward manner. They're not going to be dropping back for pass protection. I would look at, like, how long does it take them to explode out and push off that first step? What is that duration? And that would give you a duration of time to peak velocity to then target in the gym for their explosive qualities. But in general, like, a lineman needs to be really strong and explosive. So I would stick to like traditional strength training, and then Olympic lifts, or speed pulls on deadlifts, or things that are more explosive. Maybe box squats that are a little more explosive once those max strength qualities have stabilized. Some cats attacking each other over here. Do you have any recovery tips except the obvious like sleep? I use a red light device. I'll just show you one of them. These pair together into like a little strap you can wear, but it's called the Kinyon Move Plus Pro. I don't know if you can see that, Kinyon, but I use these a lot. I find that they're really helpful for like minor aches and pains, for getting the pain to go away and healing injuries. I put collagen in my coffee in the morning. I put collagen in my intra-workout drink. And then I spread out my training in a way to where I have enough time between sessions to recover. It's really what it comes down to. How have you dealt with nagging injuries that don't particularly need full time off, like shin splints? The red light, and then load management. Like if you have shin splints and you need to sprint, well, don't overdo it on the reps. Make sure your technique is good, but then don't go do like depth jumps and a bunch of other stuff that's going to aggravate it. Like, do what you absolutely have to do, which is your specific training, and then try to minimize anything that's aggravating that injury beyond that. And even with the specific training itself, the sprinting, try to manage the load in a way to where it's not getting worse. So then hopefully it can start to get better. And then once the season's over, take enough time to clear it up. And then when you reintroduce training, really focus on technique, because if you're crashing into the ground, that's going to give you shin splints. Or if your soleus and calves are super weak, you probably need to work on that in your off season, and then reintroduce some like pogos and things like that once some strength is built there. But it really comes down to load management, having enough days off, things like that. And then not doing stupid things like, if you have shin splints, doing depth jumps. Wonder if any of your subscribers run 9.9. I do have some followers who have run 9.9, but I don't know that they're like following my content to learn from me that much. Maybe they are. If they are, great. I know some guys who are pretty fast who have asked me questions that are running like 10.0, 10.1 in that range. But I do have some followers who have run 9.9. They probably just follow me because they like training content, though. Let's see. So I looked at NAU's indoor schedule this year, and I saw you've seen that post. Blah, blah. Do you plan on going to any of those meets? You register for them on Direct Athletics, but some of them are only for teams, so you got to make sure you're looking at the right meet for the NAU meets. I would like to go. It's just with work and my baby, I don't know if I'll be able to pull it off, but I'm going to try, because I would like to get some quality indoor meets in. I would like to go to New Mexico. They have some great meets. But yeah, go on directathletics.com. You're really inspiring. Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. You want to talk about testosterone, but you're not giving any questions, so I'm not going to say anything about it unless you give me a question. Mr. Nahom. Will, nice to see you. Everyone go follow Will. He's got a nice channel. Will you save this stream? Yeah, I'll save it. You can watch it later. Thank you for caring about watching the content, Will. Yusuf, as a beginner to track, if not being able to box squat your own body weight yet, will that be at the expense of my speed potential? If you can't box squat your body weight, then you need to get stronger. Definitely need to get stronger. And in that case, I would just do normal back squats, unless I wouldn't do back squats if they give you problems like, back pain or terrible knee pain. But whether you do back squats or box squats, I don't think it really matters at your stage. You just need to get stronger. If you can't box squat your body weight, you got to get stronger. Yeah, follow Will Bergman Track, guys. His track account, specifically. Any other supplements? I take creatine every day. I put that in my coffee and put that in my workout drink. Before my workouts, I take taurine, caffeine, boron, tyrosine, trimethylglycine. I take vitamin K2 to try not to have a heart attack. Let's see, what else do I have? Take magnesium. I would say that's the bulk of it. Do you think speed potential is wasted if you don't squat too much? No, I mean, there's nothing magical about a squat. It's a very effective exercise for getting stronger. It makes you stronger in a vertical manner, and you need to have good knee stiffness when you're on the ground, things like that. So I think squats are just like a simple exercise that are going to be likely to make you stronger if you do them properly, and they're easy to integrate into your training. So squats are great for that purpose, but if you make good gains from plyos, sleds, stadium runs, and just machines, like, just keep at it. There's no magic exercise. You got to find what works with you. Like, my frame probably allows me to squat better than other people without having like major issues as a result. So it works for me. But going back to asking about THP and John Evans cannot squat. If he squats, he gets hurt. So would it be good for him to do squats to get faster, jump higher? No, he has to find something else because of his constraints with his own body. So find what works for you and then just roll with that. There's no problem with doing one exercise or not doing an exercise, as long as your training as a whole makes sense and is helping you get better and works toward your goals. Let's see. Load management equals most overlooked way to prevent injuries these days for some reason. Yeah, exactly, dude. Elijah, I 100% agree. Load management is the #1 way to prevent injuries. If you progress load too quickly, you increase the load too quickly, you sustain a high load for too long, you do too much per session for too long, which is basically the same thing, you're going to get hurt, and no exercise is going to help you, you know? You have to manage load properly in a way that's sustainable in order for you to make long-term gains. Do I avoid any kind of food? I mean, I try to avoid too much like canola oil and, you know, bullshit ingredients, and I try to buy food that is like as simple as possible. Now, I still will go out and I'll eat, you know, burgers and fries or buy a pizza or things like that. Like, I'm not a neurotic dieter, but in general, if I'm going to go to the store, like, I'm going to buy the organic chicken rather than like the cheap, you know, cheapest chicken possible. Or if I'm making food, I'm going to try to use like good cooking oils or things like that. I don't eat a lot of cheese other than when I eat pizza. I just don't really like it. Most of what I eat is just like pretty basic stuff. Chicken, rice, broccoli. I'll make turkey tacos. I'll make maybe a pasta here and there. I'll eat burgers. Kind of a blend of like a traditional American diet, but with less bullshit. It's the best way I can put it. Is there a general strength to body weight ratio you think is not worth trying to improve your squat? Yeah, I mean, if you weigh 145, are you talking 4 plates per side, like 405 or 225? Because I do think that the 2 times body weight target is a good general guideline, and you can equate that to other exercises. Like, you know, you don't have to squat. Maybe it's deadlift that you do 2 times body weight, but I do think you need to move a certain amount of mass if you're the type of athlete who benefits. Yeah, so 405. If you're 145 squatting 405, there's no reason you need to pursue any greater strength in the squat. 100%. You're definitely strong enough, and that is no longer the limiting factor. So even if you squatted like 315, I would say keep working on strength, but spread out those sessions more, or, you know, do less per session, because strength is no longer the main limiting factor for you. And then long term, you can keep building up, but like once you're over like 2.2, 2.3 times body weight, I think the diminishing returns kick in real strong. How has it been managing your training since Junior was born? It really hasn't been that bad. I mean, it helps that I have a supportive wife who, we met both being on the track team in college, so like she understands track and the demands of training, and she knows how much I care about it, so she helps facilitate that by, you know, if we go to the track, she's going to watch him, and she'll get her workout in too, but she allows me to get the stuff done without, you know, complaining about it or anything like that. You know, she's just a trooper in that regard, so that helps. You have to be a team when you have a child, and even when you don't have a child in a relationship, you have to be a team, otherwise it's not going to work out. But especially when you have a child, you have to work as a team, and so that helps a lot. And then the other factor is, since I focus so much on intensity, I only have to train so often, and I can only train so often because otherwise I would get burnt out or hurt. So by focusing a lot on intensity, that sort of precludes training super often. And so it's kind of a combination of how I train dictates that I can't train, you know, 6 times a week because I'll get hurt, and then having a supportive wife who makes sure that I'm able to get out there and get my training in, that helps a lot. Yeah, Elijah, it really makes a big difference. Would you recommend using a belt while lifting heavy? Yes, 100%. There's no reason to put added strain on your discs and all that. You know, I wouldn't wear a belt if you're just like squatting with the bar, but once there's a couple 100 pounds on your back, I would say use a belt. It's cheap insurance. Is Kashane Thompson too big? Thinking about injuries, etc. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it appears to me that he got much bigger in the time that he got much faster. Now, um, why? We'll leave that for a separate discussion. But I think he might need to be muscular in order to run fast. I mean, he got bigger and he ran faster, so put two and two together. But there is that increased risk of injury if you're swinging a giant leg through. Like, that's a lot of tension going through your hamstrings and adductors and all that as you sprint. So if you get to a point where you are too big, I do think that the injury risk goes up for a couple reasons. One, just because it's harder to move your body, but B, if you get so heavy to the point where you can't produce enough vertical force to hit the ground in the right position, then you're gonna end up with like your foot hitting the ground too far out in front of you. Hamstring has to work really hard to pull yourself across the ground. That's gonna lead to increased strain on your hamstrings. Hitting the ground with a lot of mass is a lot of wear and tear. So I do think weight management is important, but you don't want to starve yourself, and you also don't want to become some like gargantuan behemoth that it becomes hard to sprint, which is simple, straightforward, but that's what I think. How long has this stream been going on? I don't know. You'd think it would tell me somewhere. Let's see. Wow, we're over an hour. Look at that. Appreciate you guys all being here. Any other questions you have, feel free to send them my way. Hang on one second. Sorry about that. Technical glitch. Speaking of Kishane, do you honestly believe you lost it from strain? I think he got tied up for sure. Like, if you are not used to competing at a gigantic meet like the Olympics, and you're only used to competing either in your home country or at smaller meets, the stress level is going to be really high. So you could see that if you were to compare when he ran 977 or whatever he did in Jamaica, how smooth he was at the end of that versus when he ran in the Olympic final and he tensed up. Clearly he was much more tense in the Olympic final, and I do think that lost him the race. Yeah, exactly. He was way less relaxed in the final. If he was more relaxed, he would have maintained his speed better and probably would have won. He should have won. That's the way I view it. Like, he was the fastest guy going into that race, but you have to put it together in the race, otherwise it doesn't matter. Got any plans the rest of the day? Not too much. I'm pretty low-key, coming on here is my main thing for the day, I think. I didn't have to work too much today, so that was nice. We went and got some breakfast. Maybe I'll meet up with some family or something later. But tomorrow, I'm supposed to meet up with Lion Martinez at the track. I'm sure some of you guys have followed him. He's a really good Masters sprinter. He's in town, not in town here, but he's close enough to where he can come up here and we can get a training session in. So tomorrow, I think I'm meeting up with Lion Martinez and we're going to get a session in. So that'll be fun. But today, keeping it low-key, maybe go out, get some dinner or something like that. But I'm not much of a partier these days or anything like that, That's why Lyles is the best sprinter right now. Yeah, he stays composed when it counts. Say what you want about his antics, and I think the painting the nails is a little odd and whatever, but do you. It's up to you. You can do whatever the hell you want, And I do think he's good for the sport, to have a star. There was maybe a little bit too much of a focus on him this last go around, to where I feel like they could have spread out the focus onto various athletes, but ultimately, Noah Lyles is a great athlete. He performs when it counts, and so you can't knock him in that regard. Am I familiar with Pronate with Nate? Yeah, we were messaging last night, actually, about talking about how a lot of... Well, I don't want to speak for him, but I made the point personally that I think a lot of coaches get blown up by their college coaches. A lot of athletes get blown up by their college coaches, and it leads to athletes quitting the sport before they've reached their potential. And I think that's a very bad thing that happens. So yeah, I'm familiar with Pronate with Nate. He's a nice guy. What would be the most effective sets reps for a sprinter to improve, say for the box squat? Creatine, I take some in the morning and during my workouts, so I don't know if that's the best, but that's when I take it. Fish oil, you can take it whenever. Sets and reps, I would do stuff like 6 sets of 3, 8 sets of 2, stuff like that, you know. But start with like warm up and then do like 4 sets of 3 at relatively heavy weights and see how you respond. If you get totally clapped by that, then just do like a couple sets at the high weight and then build up over time. But I would stick to sets of 2 and 3 and only do enough sets to the point where I feel like if I continue to do more, the quality is going to drop, and then I cut the work or cut the exercise and move on to something else. Do I alter training density or only progress session themes? Yeah, I do alter the density. So my off season is more dense, and then it gets less dense the closer to competition. But the workloads within the session might get more dense at a certain point to where like I may challenge myself a little bit on rest periods, say on like speed endurance work. But from a weekly standpoint, I would say my training gets less dense over time to allow for higher intensities each time that I do a workout and to allow for full recovery before I go to compete. Like at the beginning of the stream, I was talking about how my PR this year, I ran 10:66. That was after 4 complete off days. So I ran a race on Sunday, and then I took 4 days off, and then I competed again on Friday. So that's an example of a very low density week, but very high intensity. Yeah, Elijah, I totally agree. He wasn't used to running multiple rounds, and I think if you're tired, you're going to strain as well. You know, so it could have been a confidence thing, but it could have also just been physically he was depleted, so all he could do was strain because that was the only way he could put out the intensity he needed to be with the pack. So I have no doubt that as long as he stays healthy, he's going to be a contender for quite a while, and I look forward to seeing him run again. I want Kashane to do well. Like I would love to see him run fast. You know. What's up, Kevin? Caleb, should I lift lower and upper body on the same days during off-season training or break it up? I don't think it really matters that much. Usually I'll just throw in like one upper body exercise into my main workouts and then let that be. But earlier, like years ago, I would break it up to where I'd have like a really upper body focused day. But nowadays it's just like, I don't know, I just throw it in here and there and I don't really like focus on it too much. Do I think Speed has track talent? The streamer, I don't know. I would love to race him. So if someone wants to challenge him to a race for me, let's do it. But he seems reasonably fast, you know, for someone who isn't like a dedicated track athlete. He seems pretty quick. His technique could use a little improvement, though. Thoughts on Tobogo? I mean, he's a great athlete, you know. I would love for him to not slow down before the line so we could actually see what he's capable of, but he'll be a contender. Gout, he's got plenty of potential too. I think the issue with the younger sprinters is you got to not burn them out, you know. Like, to have a really successful career, you need to have longevity, and Gout is running really fast. He's really young, so I just hope that his coaches are wise about how much work he does, you know, so they don't blow him up. College coach was horrible. Yep, many are. So you're training on your own and transferring. Yeah, you got to do what's best for you, man. You don't want to stay in a situation that's gonna, keep you from achieving success. While we're here, please hit those like buttons and subscribe if you haven't. I got to do the whole YouTuber thing, right? Opinions about Noah racing Speed in terms of track publicity. Does this help or hurt? I mean, I think any exposure to track is good. Like, anything that gets people talking about track athletes, gets more attention on track is good. So I'm all for it. I do think that if they had done like a legit race from blocks where Noah was actually running fast, like he would have obliterated the dude, but it would be unwise for him to do that. So, it is what it is, but I think it would be funny if they did a legit race, like they ran 100 together and Noah ran fast. That would really put it into perspective what track speed really is. Yeah, Tebogo, he's insanely good. He's just he's a beast, and I want to see him be successful too. How do you determine when to listen to your body and take off versus pushing through the workout? I mean, if like aches and pains are getting worse, that's a sign you need to cool it. If you are regularly tired, like you wake up in the morning and your eyes are red until 1 in the afternoon, and it's not because you were like, smoking weed, I think that you probably need to take some time off. So just think about like, am I consistently feeling worse? Am I consistently underperforming? Am I consistently dealing with aches and pains? That's a sign you're doing too much. I don't push through really in any manner from a volume standpoint, but once again, I'm 33 and I need to really be sure that I'm not going to get hurt and all that. So there's been plenty of times in my life where I did push through, but I don't know that it led to me running any faster. So when in doubt, ease off. The pushing through part needs to be the intensity you're bringing to the sprints you do, not the number of sprints you do. The number of sprints you do that are at like 99% of your best or 100% of your best, that's what matters, not how many can you do at 90% where you're just like grinding away. Did I ever try discus? I did it in like 8th grade once, and I think I outthrew everybody, but then I never did it again. Probably should have been a thrower. Probably should have just bulked up, gotten jacked and stacked, and been a thrower. For strength, are you doing 2-3 rep sets as high weight as you can? I tend to avoid true 1 rep maxes. So like, I hit a 505 box squat a couple weeks ago. Then I went in a couple days ago and I did 455. I felt like if I went any higher, it was just going to be so slow. I probably should have just stuck with 405 because I moved 405 really well for a couple reps. If you're getting slower than like 0.4 meters per second average velocity, I feel like the risk to reward is going to start to go down. So I would go heavy, but like heavy to me is like 80 to 90%. I try to avoid 95 to 100% pretty much all the time. I've done it, but it's just like, that's more just for me to like satisfy my ego and know that I can lift a certain weight, I don't think I think you can get plenty of adaptation out of like 85% for a couple reps. Lyles put speed in a blender and disrespected him. I'll have to watch it. Do you think you will ever try the horizontal jumps? I've done triple jump. I jumped, I think, like 42 feet. My wife jumped 40 feet, or 41 feet or something like that. She was pretty good at triple jump. I've done long jump. For me, long jump aggravated my adductors. I like triple jump. I'm just probably too clunky to be good at it. It's fun, but like, it's a high cost. And at this point, it's kind of hard to like really get a lot of skill development as time goes on. I think it's easier to introduce horizontal jumping when you're younger. Now, I did do triple jump in high school, which I think is why I'm able to do it like I did a couple years ago, and it was fine. I jumped farther, but technique wasn't great. But because I have done it earlier in my life, I think it's easier for me to hop into triple jump than long jump because I never really long jumped before. I long jumped like 20 feet a few years ago. Let's see. But yeah, just to finish that question, Elijah, I would say like the wear and tear is a bit rough with jumping if your technique is not great. As a high school athlete who lives in cold weather, do you think doing more indoor meets would be optimal? Yeah, I would compete as often as you can, for sure. If you're not able to train that often because of weather, like compete as often as you can and let that be the bulk of your training, and then just get in whatever else you can. Hallways are a good idea for sure. You got to make do with the situation you're in, you know. Yeah, 10.4 is great. I don't think it really matters your height, but 10.4 is a great time. I would love to run 10.4 this year. Would you decide to run a 400? I've run one 400. Um, I don't think it builds speed endurance for the 100. I think it's irrelevant. It's just too different of a demand. I ran 50.08 on NAU's indoor track, which is at 7,000 feet elevation, and I was cooked afterwards. But I had run the 200 like all out, so I had nothing left. I'm sure I could have broke 50, but I just didn't run it properly. It's one of those things that I've toyed with. Like, maybe I should run a 400, but like, it's just brutal, man. Like, and the training for it is brutal. So I'd rather spend my time running fast. Like, that's just what I enjoy doing. Do you experience any signs of aging that make you go, God damn, I'm not 19 anymore? Honestly, not really. The main thing is, like, when I was, say, 19 years old, I could just max out like all the time, and I was tired all the time, but I could still do it. Whereas nowadays, it's harder for me to motivate to do that. And I don't think that's necessarily because of aging. I think it's more of the wisdom that comes with aging, that I know that that's not going to like lead to the results I want. So before I would do it because I felt like, you know, I just got to go ham on everything all the time. And that was just the idea that I had in my head. I could do that now, but recovery does take a little longer when you're older. That's probably the biggest thing. But other than that, I don't have any major issues. I don't feel like I'm old yet, you know. It's more that you accumulate injuries over time, and then now you have to work around those injuries you've accumulated. So like my pelvis injury is healed, but if I go do a bunch of broad jumps, it's gonna get aggravated again. So I have to avoid doing that, you know. So that's one of the workarounds that I have to keep in mind, is like not re-aggravating an old injury. More than anything, that's probably the biggest issue with aging, is just because you accumulate problems over time. Tips for trying to maintain sprint speed or anything CNS related while injured. Yeah, it sucks. You know, you could do stuff like upper body exercises that are high intensity. That's one thing I would do. You could do things single leg that are at a relatively high intensity. You just got to find ways to work around it and not, you know, do anything that you can that's intense or fast that doesn't aggravate the injury, and then that's the best you can do. Be creative, you know, you can pick what you want to do, but you just got to find ways to either lift heavy, lift fast, hop on your, you know, uninjured leg or whatever. You just got to get creative with it. I will say, though, that once you're healthy again, your speed will come back, so don't worry about that. The worst thing you can do is reintroduce sprinting too quickly and then get hurt again, because that's going to delay your recovery. Do you think you have a chance to run close to 10.0? Seems like 10-second barrier is crazy difficult. Like that you have passion for it at 33. Maybe aim to do like masters and race for the age group records. Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, 10.3 is like a lofty goal that I have that I think I'm capable of, but everything would have to come together for that to happen. 10.0 is, I don't want to say it's impossible, but that would be quite a feat for me to do. So I'm not going to say that I think that's going to happen. 10.3 maybe. I would like to continue on and target those masters age groups though, for sure. What's up, Wayne? Thanks for stopping by. Fatherhood's been great, man. It's been such a blessing. I have a healthy, strong boy. He's smart. He's really progressing at a rapid pace, and he's very alert, very in tune, very interactive. He's a happy guy, healthy guy. So I'm very, very thankful to be a father now, and very thankful to have a healthy boy and a healthy mom. It's been great. It's the most rewarding thing, most fulfilling thing that I've ever experienced in my life. So anyone who tells you that you shouldn't have kids, they're full of shit, for lack of a better term. You know, obviously you want to be in a situation where it makes sense. I believe you should, having grown up in a single parent household, I do think that it's important to have both parents together, you know. So don't go have kids if you think you're going to break up with the person that you're with, or you're having the kid with. And this isn't specific to you, Wayne. I don't know if you have kids or not, but just in general for everybody, you know, when the time comes and you are able to support your family and you have a good relationship that is healthy and that you're both going to be a good team together to raise the child, I think having a kid or having multiple kids is a great thing that everybody, all my friends who have had kids, they love it. You know, my brother, he has kids, he loves it. So it's great. Very happy. Some 100, 200 guys just aren't built for the 400. Yeah, exactly. Like I am not built for the 400. I can mash my way through 100, but maybe a 150, but beyond that. I wish the 150 was an official event because I would probably target that as my main event if it was. Unfortunately, it's rare to have one at a meet. If I put on a meet this year, I'd like to have a 150. Probably my last one here before sleeping. Damn, bro, you're dedicated. You're in the Netherlands right now. Good for you. Would it be realistic for me to hit 11.2 in my second year doing track? Ran 12.02. It certainly can happen, so don't limit yourself. It took me, I started as a freshman, I think I ran 12.6, and then I ran 11.3 my senior year. Depends how old you are, depends, you know, how skilled you are, how quickly you adapt, all that stuff. But you can definitely run 11.2 someday, but I wouldn't put pressure on yourself that you have to do it now or next year or whatever. Like, be patient, stick with the process, and let it organically come to fruition. Let's see. Oh, it's the record of a local club. Yeah, then go for it, man. Just be patient, you know. What should I do if my acceleration is really good but top end speed is only okay and holding me back? Well, you got to focus more on your speed for sure. But I would look at, you know, is the acceleration that you're doing limiting your speed? Because if all you ever do is run 30s, you're going to run the 30 in a way that gets you to the 30 the fastest, but that may not be what gets you to the 60 or the 100 the fastest. Your acceleration has to be efficient enough to allow you to reach top speed, be in the right positions, have the right technique, and then maintain speed and minimize deceleration as the race goes on. So, you know, if you're getting to 30 meters and you're leaning forward and you're, you know, butt kicking and crashing into the ground, well, the way you're accelerating, even though the time is good, the quality of that acceleration is not good because it's inhibiting your top speed. So make sure that you're getting into upright positions, you're nice and tall, striking the ground under yourself and able to bounce off the ground, and work on your speed, you know, in good postures and everything. You can do acceleration work and flies, but eventually I would really suggest bringing them together and doing flat sprints from blocks or from a static start where you go through 50 or 60 or 70 meters and, you know, expose yourself to upright sprinting. That's the only way you're going to get faster from a top speed perspective. Any thoughts about Tyreek Hill constantly yapping about how he beat Noah in a race? I know it's performative, but it still bothers me. Yeah, it's totally performative, but I mean, he can talk all he wants, but they need to line up on the track and run and settle it if he's gonna keep talking and people are gonna take him seriously. There's no doubt that Tyreek Hill is fast, but I don't think he's capable of running 9.7, you know, or 9.80. Thoughts on muscle fibers, detraining, deloading? Yeah, if you chronically load yourself and you're running a lot all the time and you are just constantly training, you're probably going to get a shift from the fastest twitch fibers to intermediate fibers. If you lift too much, if you do too much endurance training, if you do too much speed endurance work, like you're going to shift away from those most twitchy, fast twitch fibers. So the biggest thing is making sure that you're rested going into competitions, making sure you have some off days within your week. And then beyond that, I don't think you'll have issues. I wouldn't go out and run a bunch of miles if you're trying to run fast. You know, you have to be specific to the goal that you have. But overtraining is the best way to kill your muscle fiber type. I use my phone to track times. What else can I track? Are there programs I can use on a PC? You can use Kinovia if you have a Windows computer. Love the videos and tips. Thank you, brother. Appreciate your content. Inspired me to record my training as well. Cool. If you have any advice for speed content creators just starting out? Yeah, I would say don't get caught up in trying to act like you know everything. Don't get caught up in trying to like have the perfect program, like you're exploring, you're learning how to train, you're learning what works with you. And so I don't think you need to go out there and act like, you have perfect training or anything. Just share organically. Don't share because, oh, ATHLETE.X does it this way or this content creator does it that way. Like, find your own way of doing it. For example, if you guys follow fitness content in general, I'm sure you know who Ivan Jurek is. He's the squat everyday guy. He started doing squat every day. Now there's all these guys who are doing squat every day, and they've kind of followed the same type of content that he makes, and that's fine. But I think it's better if you just find your own unique way of doing it, and you present the information that you like to present, because people will follow you because they like you. Like I'm sure there's a lot of people who follow me purely for the content, but there's also a lot of people who follow because they like me as a person. And so you should just be yourself, be true to yourself, and if there's something you think is an important point to cover, then cover it. If you think you just want to show your training and share your training with people, do that. Like, do what feels right to you. Don't have some preconceived notion of you have to make some specific type of content or it has to be informational. You could just be showing your training sessions, and some people will like that. Let's see. My throat is getting cooked from. That's why I don't do these streams, because my throat gets so dry from talking. I don't talk that much in my normal day. I'm kind of a quiet person. Let's see. Thoughts on high intensity biking? I found it helps me get through injuries, days, blah blah blah. The deload. Yeah, biking is a great way to cross train, and it's a way to get some high frequency movements in, or to just do something different with less wear and tear. So yeah, biking's good. I wouldn't do a lot of biking if you're about to compete, just because the motor pattern's very different, but there's no problem with incorporating high intensity biking into your training. Mental training and preparation. I think visualization is good. I think thinking about your technique in between sessions is good. Visualizing yourself running as fast as you want to run, visualizing yourself winning races, visualizing what it feels like to run as fast as you can with the perfect technique. I think that stuff is really helpful. Appreciate the advice. Still learning. Yeah, man. Your Actin 3 profiles RR, so I'm mostly fast twitch. What's the best amount of training I should do for speed to keep a lot of my... I don't know. I wouldn't really worry about it. I think that's a little too, I think people get too hyper-focused on things like muscle fiber type, or... There's any number of things you could get hyper-focused on, so I wouldn't frame it in that way of, how much should I train to maintain my fast twitch fibers? You need to train at a level where the bulk of your training is very intense, and you don't train so much that now you're doing stuff that isn't very intense. If you're doing fly 30s or running 70-meter sprints, after 3 or 4 of them, you're not going to be able to run as fast. So why keep doing it, Run fast and then shut it down, and then rest and come back and do it again when you're able to achieve the same or better intensities as you did in the previous session. That's the way that I would look at it. I wouldn't look at it as how much do I train in order to maintain this or do that. You need to train as frequently as you can that allows for maximal intensity sprinting when you do it. And then only do so many sprints to the point where they're all very intense. That's kind of how I would approach it. Basketball or soccer? No, I've worked with coaches. I've done consulting calls with coaches in those sports. But I think just getting stronger and faster, just in a general sense, is really what you need to do if you're playing a team sport. Get better at acceleration, get good at top speed so you can run fast without getting hurt, and get the adaptations that come from that. Get strong so your tissues are resilient to injury, and that's about it. I wouldn't think too much more deeply on it than that. How do you train core? I'm probably the wrong person to ask because I always neglect core, but I'll just throw in an exercise in a workout, activate, whether I want it to target my abdominals or some pelvic stability. I'll just pick an exercise and do it, but I don't do that much core, so I'm probably the worst person to ask for that. Where are we at on time right now? Let's see. We're at an hour 40. All right. How would you train if you did it more? Yeah, I would do some. I'd probably throw in some after some sprint sessions or on like tempo days. I think tempo days are a great time to do a core circuit. And then when you're lifting, just throw in one kind of like maybe a little bit more intense of a core exercise in. I do like to do oblique work, so like side planks, side plank crunches. Sometimes I'll hang from the pull-up bar and I'll lift my legs, but I'm trying to rotate my pelvis, so I'm activating the lower abdominals, or I'll pick up my pelvis side to side to activate the obliques. I like to do stuff like that in my lifting workouts. What's my weakness? Endurance is a weakness, but I don't think that's super relevant for the 100. Right now, top speed is, well, speed maintenance, but like when I'm well trained with those qualities, I'm pretty good at speed maintenance and I'm pretty good at top speed, relatively speaking. My biggest weakness is probably like the frequency with which I can train at a high intensity level without getting hurt. Off season, 70 meter style training. I'd do more like short speed work and acceleration in the off season and then progress to like this time of year. I think you got to get into that 70 to 90 meter range at this point in time. But during like the real off season, like when you've taken a break, I would just reintroduce acceleration and short speed work and then progress up to the 70 to 90 meter range. And you progress based on like, if I jump from 40s to 70s, is that last 30 meters just trash? All right, then maybe you need to go from like 40 to 50 meters, So just progress incrementally up to it. Deadlift is through the roof, so your core is crazy strong. Yeah, like my back is really strong, I think. So my anterior core is probably also strong. I mean, you got to think, if I can do a 505 box squat and it's not grinding and I'm really stable with the bar, my core is probably strong, right? So if anything, I lack core endurance. Like I cramp up if I do high reps on core. But I think from a strength perspective, my core is quite strong, Like otherwise I wouldn't have deadlifted 500 pounds or 660 on the hex bar, or I've muscle cleaned a lot of weight. I've snatched a lot of weight. I've cleaned a lot of weight. I've squatted a lot of weight. So I do think my core is pretty strong in general. Any advice or 800 meter training? That's a tough one. I'm not great with 800 meter training. Other than that, I do think you can. It really depends on the type of athlete you are. Like if you're a sprinter moving to the 800, you can probably get a lot out of like repeat 200s and slightly shorter work. If you're more of a distance athlete, I'd have you do long runs and stuff like that, plus a mix of speed work and then specific endurance work. But I'm not the best with 800, so I'll leave that up to someone else. Yeah, train movement, not muscle fiber type, exactly. The way I look at training in general is I need to create certain adaptations. What exercise can I use at what load or intensity or movement velocity or whatever to achieve a stress that will, with some reasonably high probability, encourage my body to adapt in the direction I want it to adapt. So if I need greater raw force production, I'm going to pick an exercise that I can be forceful with and load it to a load that requires a lot of force production, and then I'll see what happens as a result of that. If I want to run fast, I need to run fast. Think about things in a simple way as best as you can before you go get too deep, because it's easy to get lost in the weeds with this stuff, and there's so many people talking about all these different concepts out there that it's easy to get led astray, and now you're doing some like whack stuff that doesn't even help, So keep it simple. Am I sprinting fast? Am I lifting heavy? Am I lifting explosively? Am I taking enough time off between sessions to achieve the intensities I need to get better? Start there. I'm sure I'll continue to compete long term, like 20 years from now. I can't predict the future, but for the foreseeable future, I plan to continue to train, and when I feel good, I'll probably compete, and I'll keep the channel as long as I'm alive. I'm sure. Um, I have no reason to not do it. For me, sprinting is like my main hobby, so until I get bored of it, or if my legs fell off, then I wouldn't be able to sprint. But until that happens, I'm sure I'll keep sprinting, whether it's to try and get faster or not. We'll see how long that lasts. But I don't have any plans to stop. Getting to the end of the water bottle here. We are at an hour and 45 minutes. Man, that flew by. It's almost 3 o'clock here. Any other questions you guys got? Happy to take them. Otherwise, if we slow down, I'll probably hop off here momentarily. But in the meantime, I appreciate you guys all being here and tuning in. It's all good, man. I'll post it, so you're welcome to watch it. But we're still here, so if you got any questions or want anything, sports training systems, happy to answer. Feel free to leave any questions you got here in the chat. But like I said earlier, now that I got my green screen figured out, maybe I can do these more often. I'll have to figure out a way to not be just in this dark black background that looks like I'm in a cave, but I'll figure that out. Maybe I'll break out my better camera. I just didn't want it to overheat, so I threw the GoPro up, and my lighting isn't great in here, so we're going simple for this one, Black background, simple camera, just to get this done. Thanks, Vinny. I appreciate it, man. Yeah, you know what? Anytime a birthday comes around, I think it's important to just be grateful for, the time that you have, and because there's plenty of people who didn't make it this far, and so anytime I have a birthday, I try to remember that I'm blessed to have made it this far, and I'm very grateful to have all you guys to, that care what I think about training and all that, and are interested in what I have to say. It's really cool. Anytime I'm at a meet, I meet people who watch my channel, and when I see them light up, I don't know, it's really rewarding, knowing that I've helped someone in some way. It's cool. Caleb, at 5'11" and a half, the half is important. As someone who is not 6 foot, you got to get every half inch that you can, I think I'm 5'11" and a half or something like that too. And 185 pounds, so we're basically the same build. Very lean. I've always been worried that I weigh too much, especially when other sprinters I run against seem 20 pounds less than me. Yeah, so there's certain body types that are going to carry more weight. I don't know if it's bone structure. I don't know if it's muscle. I don't know what it is, but there's people who you're just gonna weigh more than them. The way I view weight for sprinting is you have a natural range that you can kind of go between. You need to diet a little bit to get to that low end of the range, but you don't need to starve yourself. When it's time to compete, or rather leading up to that, maybe a month out or 2 months out, I would try to inch your way down to a lower weight that's at the low end of your normal range and compete there. But I wouldn't try to starve yourself and lose 20 pounds, because now you're going to probably lose the things that, the gifts that you have that make you a good athlete. If you're 5'11", 185, you're probably muscular and you're probably strong. If you lose so much weight that you lose your muscularity and strength, it might negatively affect your speed, or you're going to be so depleted because you're not eating anything that you're not going to be able to recover, and that's a problem in and of itself. So try to ease down to a lighter weight. Like, I ran my fastest at 176 or 177 last year. Right now I'm about 186. So if I could get down to 180, 178, somewhere in there, and maintain my strength, great. But am I going to get down to 165? Ain't happening, So that's kind of how I think about that. Do you count wind-aided PBs? I mean, my wind-aided personal best and my normal personal best are the same time, 10:66. So I don't know. I think in all conditions PR is worth looking at. Like, you still ran the time, and there's plenty of people who run in wind and don't run that much faster, because if the if the wind is pushing you over the ground faster, you still have to apply vertical force in a very short period of time to get off the ground and maintain your technique. So you still did it. But if you had like a 10 meter per second wind, I probably wouldn't count that time. But if it's like 2.5, that should tell you that you are able to do that without wind on a good day. You know, that's kind of how I view it. Thank you, Rogue. Appreciate that. 290 fly 30 ballpark 100 meter time. Really depends on your speed maintenance and your acceleration, but I would say that you should be capable of running 10.7, 10.8 definitely with a 290 fly 30. That's what I ran last week actually, and I ran a 681.60 and a 878.80. That's from a free lap touchpad, but regardless, should be in the ballpark there. Do you only offer training programs for weight training in the gym? I don't currently have any strength-only programs on my site. Yeah, exactly, Elijah. Like, don't trip out about your weight. You can find, like I said, you can find a range where I know I can bounce between this range and it's not going to negatively affect me too much in any way. So, like, I'd rather be a little lighter. But you have to work with who you are as an athlete, and if you naturally walk around at 185 and it's very easy for you to maintain that weight and you're lean, like, don't stress about it. Don't trip out on it, because there's other people who are just built different. You know, some people are more wiry frames, and if they tried to add weight, they might run slower, but it just depends on the athlete, really. All right, we're at 43 likes. Let's try to get to 50. I know that's not a massive amount, but I really don't care. Supposedly it helps the algorithm a little bit, but I don't know. I think watch time is the biggest thing for algorithms, because they want to keep you on the platform. They want to keep you consuming content. So watch time is huge. So if you ever watch one of my videos, even if you're going to stop watching it, like, let it play in the background or something so I get better watch time. All right, I got a screaming cat out there who wants to come in. We're at 1 hour 52 minutes. We've been cooking, man. It's pretty good. All right. Any final questions before we wrap this up? I will post this later, so if you missed the beginning of the stream, no worries. You'll be able to go back and check on any questions that were there. But in the meantime, I'm sure we'll do this again, but I appreciate you guys coming on here, spending some time out of your day to hang out on here. Some good questions you guys asked, got me thinking, so I appreciate that. But I'm going to get out of here and move on to the rest of my day, and we will meet again soon. Maybe next time I plan one of these, I'll give a heads up so more people can be here. All right. Last question. Yeah, I have a little bit of a stiff torso, I would say. Last question from Elijah. Have you dealt with OCD or anything of that nature when it comes to training? Yeah, in the past. But that's why I say simplify things. You have to simplify things, because there's so much information out there that it's easy to get caught up on all these little details. And in reality, you know, you need to simplify things so that you can have a more clear idea of what you need to do. And if you simplify it down to basic things about, like, the types of adaptations you want, how often you can realistically do that, like, focus on the adaptations you're trying to create, apply a stimulus that will do that, and then let it be and see what happens, you know, and then only add things in gradually from there. Vinny, political views, Bidlow 2028. Yeah, I don't know. Will I be old enough to run for president in 2028? I don't know. I tend to vote on, like, you know, who's going to keep my taxes lower, who's going to be favorable to Second Amendment rights, who's going to be favorable to freedom of speech, who's going to be more focused on, like, you know, our country and the people of our country being successful. That's what I care about more than anything. I care about this country a lot. My family has been here. There were Bidlows in the Revolutionary War. There were Bidlows in the Civil War. So at a minimum, there was one in each of those wars. So we've been here a long time. I care deeply about this country. I believe that, you know, we need a plurality of viewpoints. So I don't attack people who have other viewpoints than me. I just care that they're coming to those conclusions with information that is real and true, and they're not being, manipulated by propagandists. So that's the gist of answering that question of political views, and that's the farthest I'll go into it for right now. But yeah, maybe I'll run for president. All right, guys. Thank you very much. I will catch you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you all. You're all awesome. So thank you for being here. Trust in yourself. Be confident. Have fun when you train. And I'll catch you guys next time. I'm out.